Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. Of course, we know that Pakistan is hosting an international conference on girls' education as we speak. It is being attended by 150 dignitaries from 44 Muslim and friendly countries. We'll be talking about this conference, what it aims to highlight, the concerns at this time as a society that we face, and globally, of course, as far as the OIC is concerned, the way that we as a whole made an effort. We've seen dignitaries attending. We also know that Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai is also set to address the conference, and of course Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, OIC Secretary General, is has stressed at this time the need for ceasefire in Gaza. They've also discussed efforts to promote girls' education and empowerment in the Muslim world. We'll be talking about all of this. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this kind of conference and what it means globally and what it means for education of girls, women, as far as Pakistan also is concerned, as far as the region is concerned. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Anum Abbasi, who is PTV World Correspondent. She has covered the conference. She'll be updating us on what all went on and what was discussed, and overall, thank you so much for being with us, Anum. We'll also be joined by Dr. Mukhtar Ahmed, who's Chairman HEC. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Muhammad Mukhtar is also, and Dr. Muhammad Mukhtar, who's VC National Skills University, also Faisal Bari, who's Dean Lums. He's also a columnist and of course an associate professor on a joint appointment for education and economics. Thank you for being with us today. Anum Abbasi, how do you look at it? What did you observe, and overall your takeaways from today from the conference?
First of all, thank you so much, Mahrukh, for having me on your show. I will begin with saying that it is a very historic moment for Pakistanis and for our country, as it is for the first time ever that we are conducting a conference of such type where women are being discussed, where girls are being discussed, and this is very promising, as perhaps now there's more than ever there is a need for the girls' education primarily in the Muslim countries. And what is more happening and happy about this is that almost 44 countries, delegates and ministers have joined in Islamabad with us for a 2-day conference, and all these dignitaries, they are having their own perspectives of how the girls' educations can be reshaped and the legislations can be made in order to empower the women through girls' education. So I can see this is a very good step taken, an initiative taken by the Honorable Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, as it is the first time ever that a Muslim country, which and the credit has gone to Pakistan for hosting such a conference for the first time ever. So I can see a very good step coming from the government by collaborating with all the Muslim countries already.
Right. Anum, I'm going to go to Faisal Bari and then I'll come to you. Faisal Sahab, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Ji. I want to talk to you specifically about the global perspective and challenges that we know that education for women and the fact that women empowerment aims to address those global issues like, for example, gender inequality or social injustice. I want to talk about that particularly, and what is your take on having these kind of initiatives also, and how much they contribute overall to a step forward in thinking, because of course we know how this can lead to perhaps combating regressive ideologies, which is something that has been concerning us of late, perhaps more, as we observe the kind of patterns that we've seen, as we observe the kind of content that is circulated, that comes out. So all of it, I understand it's a loaded question, but let's start with, what are your takeaways from initiatives like this?
So first of all, let me say Pakistan has been making some progress on the gender gap over the years in education. We have a lot more girls in school. They're still less than boys. There's still a gender gap, but it has become a lot more geographic now. The bigger cities, we don't see as much of a gap. In some provinces, the gap is much less now because of the work that has been done over the last 2-3 decades. But in Balochistan, in some areas of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, South Punjab, interior Sindh, the gap is still significant and needs to be narrowed down. I think the bigger problem is that a lot more girls are going through education, but we haven't yet formed a way to bring them into the labor market. So Pakistan continues to have one of the lowest labor force participation rate for women in the region, if not in the world. And that is something to be very concerned about. We need to open up opportunities for women for work, productive work, and open up all sorts of avenues for them in terms of coming into the job market and opening up their businesses. It is lovely to have such conferences, but I think the more important part is what happens after the conference. What are the pledges that we make, and how do we live up to those pledges? What are the investments that need to happen? I mean, everyone is aware Pakistan has about 26 million 5 to 16-year-olds out of school. Those children need to have access to education. Half of them, or more than half of them, are girls. So we need to focus a lot about the education and skill development of our children. And I think if these conferences allow us to focus on that more, to get pledges, to then honor those pledges, to put more resources into it, to highlight the importance of this area, I think it's a lovely idea, and I'm very glad the government is doing this. But if this conference remains just a conference, then obviously the gain from it would be very limited.
Faisal Bari sahab, there's, the one unique thing, of course, is that it highlights collective responsibility of nations, and for the OIC together in this way to participate and take a step. Do you think that there is, perhaps it looks like, there are higher chances of there being some kind of sustainable measures put in place, or like you said, perhaps funds to be allocated towards, this cause, which of course Pakistan is not facing alone. I mean, I understand the statistics overall within Pakistan are not great, but this is a cause of concern overall also, like you also said.
Very much so, I think, but there's a lot of diversity across the Muslim world as well. There are countries, Turkey, Malaysia, and many others, that have done remarkably well, or sometimes quite well in how they have educated their children, including both boys and girls, but especially girls. And then there are countries that are at a very different stage and state of their development, Afghanistan being one, where there are major hurdles to girls' education that have been put up recently by the current government. And so there's a huge variety within this, what we call the Muslim world or the Muslim Ummah. And of course, if OIC and all leaders pledge to doing something about it, hopefully they'll be able to encourage each other, follow the leaders, and also encourage those who have been left behind or are being left behind or have been left behind to open up as well towards doing much more for girls' education. And we do have some wonderful examples even in recent times. Look at Bangladesh, how they have been opening up and have been providing tremendous opportunities for education for girls and women, and also employment and self-employment opportunities within the economy. There are obviously other countries also doing similar things. So I think if the Muslim Ummah can even learn from each other, can get inspired by the good examples there, and can encourage other brothers and sisters who are maybe thinking differently right now and need to be sort of inspired to come forward, I think it would be a lovely outcome for the conference. It is quite...
Let me come back to you. Please stay with us. I want to talk more about what these actionable strategies can be. I'm going to go to Dr. Muhammad Mukhtar, who's VC National Skills University. Mukhtar sahab, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. I can hear you well. Thank you.
Mukhtar sahab, we're talking about, of course, this conference and what kind of strategies can be developed. In your opinion, what are some of the measures that perhaps can be taken collectively? When we talk about the OIC, when we talk about the Muslim world, and the issues, of course, I think Bari Sahab very articulately highlighted that there is a lot of the spectrum and the issues vary, and the degrees to which the problem is there as far as girls' education is concerned. Also, it's varied overall. But of course, it's an issue for the Muslim world. It's an issue for the world even. One has to concede. Do you think what kind of those strategies can be put in place, in your opinion, collectively, for example?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. But first, let me say about my general thoughts about this conference. I think this is a great day for the entire Muslim world. And of course, Pakistan is leading that one. Because the Muslim woman has already been seen in the, what we can call it, in the developed world, that they don't get the opportunities and they have issues for that one. And today, I think the Prime Minister must be really happy because he was flanked with two of the very senior personality from the Muslim world, the OIC Secretary General, and as well as World Muslim League and Chairman of Muslim Scholars. And of course, all this credit goes to the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training, the Honorable Minister and his very diligent Secretary, Mr. Muhyiddin Wani. They all have been working day and night. Now, talking about the mayors are already on ground. The strategies are already ongoing. If you look into the Islamabad schools, even in public schools, a lot more opportunities are being provided. But this conference, I think definitely Dr. Bari was also mentioning about the skills. Of course, we have to provide, to these 26 million that are being mentioned, and majority of them, they are young girls. They need to get a proper skill education. They need to get education that aligns with the job market, what is available. So, I think all these mayors, they could be the great effort and particularly a symbolic message. Look at this one. Malala Yousafzai is here, the novelist from Pakistan, and of course the conference started with the Lieutenant General Negar Johar. She is one of the most powerful voice among women. So all this reflects that Pakistan is very much ready to lead the cause of Muslim women's issues and work with the rest of the Muslim world to devise strategies that can bring Muslim women at par with the other developed world women.
Right, fair enough. Bari Sahab, we know that what this conference aims to do. What are some of the main issues? Let's talk about Pakistan. As an educationist, in your opinion, that we face as a society. We talk about, combating regressive ideologies, yet they exist left, right and center wherever we look. As far as Pakistan as a country is concerned, even globally, even if we look at the Muslim Ummah. How do we combat them? What are some of the measures you feel can be taken? Let's talk about short term. Or you think that this is going to be a long-term effort and it has to have that kind of resolve that is going to take a lot of time for us to be able to, of course, come to a point where we are at par with perhaps the rest of the world.
So, Mahrukh, I think the effort has to be medium to long term, but it has to start today and now. So that it has an effect on in the medium term. Now, there are quite a few people who think that there are social issues here as well, but I think in my work, and I've been working on education for a good 20 years now, I don't find many parents who say they are not going to give education to their girls or their children. What happens is that there are actually hurdles in the way of providing education. We have, I think, getting close to the point where we have solved for most of Pakistan, not for some of the rural areas or some of the areas where development is still low. The problem of at least access to primary schools. Primary schools now, we have plenty in terms of number, or at least we're getting there. I think the main problem starts when girls transition from primary to middle and high school. There the dropout rates continue to be very high. Our pyramids for schools are very narrow at the top. We have very few middle and high schools, so we have to change that. We have to, there are two ways to bring children to school. Either you bring the school closer to children or children closer to the school. So the distance aspect
I'm sorry, I'm going to interject for a little bit. As far as, overall, if you look, like you said, of course, there's a huge disparity in what's happening in, for example, the urban centers and what's happening in, for example, rural areas. Like, let's talk about, say, in southern Punjab even. There is, the way that education is looked at, and I'm glad that you said that, we have been able to change things significantly. But do you think that, in those areas there is enough, enlightenment, there is enough realization of the fact that women and girls also have to be educated at the same level, at same power with, for example, the male members of society? Because we also know that even for the men, it becomes a challenge when we look at, for example, the agrarian centers, or we look at, areas where they're looked at, another set of hands in terms of course, the work power, and in terms of what the financial situation is overall, and the kind of, as a society that we face, as those families that have, of course, we know that overpopulation is an issue also.
Population is a very big issue. There are about 6 million children born in Pakistan every year. And that's just the pipeline. I mentioned 26 million that are out of schools, but there are 6 million children born every year. To provide for those 6 million children, 5 years from now, they'll start primary school, and then they have to be in school for the next 16 odd years. So that's a huge long-term commitment that we do need to do something about population growth rates. But leaving that aside, you talked about whether is there awareness that girls have to be educated. I think that awareness is increasing very fast, and increased a lot in most areas of Pakistan. There are some pockets in which that is still an issue, and I think there we have to bring development programs and programs that make people more aware of the returns to education for girls, whether they work outside or not.
Because if we talk about, for example, some KP areas in KP, we talk about, some areas of Balochistan, we talk about interior Sindh, we talk about southern Punjab. That's also, there's a huge difference between the urban centers and those areas, right? I mean, statistically speaking also. Is that correct?
But wahan availability bhi kam hai na. So it's not just the fact that their parents in those areas don't want their children to be educated. I think the spread of availability of schools, etc., is also very different between urban areas and those areas. Ek to wo hai. But more importantly, I think it is for the nation to realize that.
But you're saying that, there is, even in those areas now, a realization, if the resources are there, that they do need to send their girls to school. And that's a huge step also.
Massive demand. You go anywhere and you will find that there are parents who are saying that if the school was nearby, if it was safe to go, if it was possible for the girls to get educated without any problems, they would definitely send children. And this is my experience across Pakistan, empirical work that I've done. So I think that notion that there is
that. So I think, let me come back to you on that. I'm going to include Anum. Anum, if you heard what Bari Sahib is saying, he's saying that there is a realization that, there is that they have to send their kids if there were those resources. Do you think that this conference is going to focus on those issues also, like having that kind of safe environment, having those resources? We know that the government is focused on it. We know that particularly in Punjab also, we've seen, across the board, so many programs being launched even as we speak, the kind of initiatives that have been taken. One can't, not acknowledge the effort that is being made overall for women's, girls' education and overall. But do you think that this is going to focus on those issues also? Because, of course, resources are a huge problem everywhere.
Okay, Mahrukh. while the Prime Minister was addressing in his speech, he has mentioned specifically about the Danish schools that was an initiative taken by PMLN, and it has been a huge success. And he actually highlighted the students. They were sitting in the podium and they raised their hands and they actually highlighted how education and the awareness regarding education about girls can bring change in the society. So it is already been said and done by the government earlier as well, and here also through these collaborations, through such conferences, I can assure you that all the Muslim countries have enough resources, but the only need right now is to invest the energy and effort collectively to bring about the change that we've been talking about from quite long. And as we talk about the Pakistani's infrastructure, what I have noticed is that now we have a smartphone in everyone's hand. No matter if a child, a parent or a girl is living in urban area or the rural area, the mobile phone, the smartphone can be digitalized and used for the purpose of education. And the awareness that Mr. Bari was just talking about has actually been created by the use of a mobile phone and utilization of the right social media. So we cannot negate the power of social media connecting through the people and then guiding them how to bring change in the attitude of their family and how to allowing the girls to start sending them to the schools. So yes, there is a need for developing infrastructures, there is a need for allocating more resources, yet we have internet as a very strong tool that can be utilized, and this was highlighted during the conference as well. Now the world that we are living in is the world of artificial intelligence. We no more need the same structure of schools, the physical classrooms, when the technology is facilitating you to provide the education through the internet, through the smartphones. So yes, there can be such steps which can be taken seriously by the government through such collaboration of the countries, and we can develop up with such applications which can connect to the girls and families who can still, you know, they are wanting to educate their girls, yet they cannot afford to send the girls outside the homes.
So yes, virtual schooling, or you're saying online, of course, that's now an option. Let me go to Dr. Muhammad Mukhtar. Mukhtar Sahab, there is, of course, I think like Anum here mentioned, Danish schools, of course there's success, they are definitely a success story, specifically in areas like Southern Punjab. We've seen Rahim Yar Khan, all of those areas. There's specifically, we've seen them, they have been a success story like no other. Do you think that, you know, models like these perhaps is something overall that we can focus on more, so that, you know, we can have, like Bari Sahab is saying, there's definitely a lot of the realization that kids have to go to, women and the girls have to go to school has definitely permeated all over society to a large extent. So there's you know, that model is certainly something that can be used more, and I think that is what Anum is saying, that the Prime Minister also spoke about it.
Yes, I think she is very right in saying, like, there is a lot more urge among the girls. They want to learn new things. And she was mentioning toward these smartphones. And let me share with you, nowadays, the government is working on, in Islamabad, it has been already institutionalized, like the arrival of Chromebook for students, like they will have an opportunity to learn. But I would like to share with you, like, I mean, of course, Danish School is a beautiful idea. I was part and parcel of this Danish School system because we were training the faculty members. At that time, I was serving as Vice Chancellor of Islamic University, Bahawalpur, when this project was initiated. And initially, these Danish schools were in southern Punjab. And now, I think it will be lovely to see one Danish school in the Islamabad also. And in that, like, this Danish school is going to be unique. It will be having a lot more, what is, like, required in the job market, what type of people the employers are looking for. But I would like to mention over here particularly, because we are a skill university and we are the only UNESCO UNEVOC center which particularly also focuses on educating girls. So we have a great experience. The girls who are coming over here, they have a specialized interest. I can say something like documentary filmmaking, video editing, 3D graphic, cyber security, programming, and with learning by short-term skills, they are getting better jobs. But we are just one university. What I can suggest, these Danish School and other, of course, it was being mentioned we have a 26 million out of school children. They can be trained in this, and they could be good citizens, including both girls and boys, because we have to take care of both of them.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Muhammad Mukhtar, I understand you have limited time. Thank you for joining us. Bari Sahab, one of the issues that we've seen, the World Bank, according to the World Bank data, is that 77% of children in Pakistan are learning poor, and overall, most fail to contribute effectively to society due to a lack of quality education. How do we combat this? Because while you've said, and that's I think a great thing that there is realization, people want to send, of course, if they have access and safe schools nearby, all of those things, then perhaps more girls will go to school. But the question is, the quality of education also remains a challenge, right?
Gee, very much so. And you rightly mentioned 70% or 77% learning poverty. So learning poverty essentially means that for a child who's in, say, grade 5, how far behind is he or she from where he should be in terms of understanding basic mathematics, English, Urdu, and so on. So our children are way behind, at least 2 to 3 grades behind usually, as they go through the education system. And so what you have to realize, I think what all of us have to realize, is that education, and especially quality education, is expensive to provide. It is expensive because you need good teachers, you need other resources. And so irrespective of who pays for it, whether it's parents or society at large, that expense has to be met. Now, the problem in Pakistan, one problem is population, we have already talked about. The other is 50% of Pakistan is poor, and more than 50-60% of Pakistan just can't afford to pay for quality or education. Now, the problem is that means most of the public sector schools, other than the kind of schools that you mentioned, Danish ho gaya, ya cadet schools, and some of them are reasonable quality, good quality, and of course there's high fee private sector schools also. But other than that, most of the schools called low fee private schools or government schools, they do not provide quality education to our children, and that's the main problem. To provide quality education, we'll have to invest a lot more in these schools, in the teachers, in how we teach, which is pedagogy issues, and how we make students understand things, etc., etc. And that is the effort that is needed. It is needed.
Where do you think, where do you think the problem? Of course, the issue of teachers and teacher training is also something that is faced. When we talk about quality education, the methods of teaching, all of those. And do you think that we have enough? Training schools, we have enough institutes that are training staff, teachers, for example, for the kind of education that, of course, we want our children to get. And, we are talking about, different institutes like, for example, LUMS or other institutes also overall, private schools, to come at par with, for example, public schools. There needs that effort also. Is a long haul, right?
Ji, bilkul, kyunke, just to give an estimate, there are more than 2 million teachers working in Pakistan right now, both public and private sector. And Punjab alone in government sector has almost 450,000 teachers, right? So you need a massive system for teacher training. And if you decentralize, you need a lot of institutions that do teacher training, teacher support, and so on. So we are talking of a very, very large system, because Pakistan, as you said, is not only growing fast, but it is a very young nation, because we haven't done the demographic transition as yet. So a lot more resources need to go into that effort. Dusri baat, keep in mind that teaching, but in general, teaching in Pakistan is not a profession of choice. There are very few people who want to either themselves become teachers or want their children to become teachers, right? Here, people want to be doctors, engineers, CS, MBA, whatever. And if people, by and large, there are some obviously who want to go into teaching, but most of the people who end up in the teaching profession end up there because they couldn't go into professions of their choice. And this we have seen in empirical literature also. When we ask teachers, was this the profession of your choice? Most of them say no. So now what needs to happen is we need to change that dynamic as well. In many other countries, teaching, even at school level, but across the spectrum, is a profession of choice. People want to come into teaching. This is the example that we get from many of the countries that we uphold as doing great work in education. So we need to start changing.
An example of regressive ideologies, right, that we spoke about earlier, and an effort to perhaps combat that kind of regressive thinking, regressive ideologies that unfortunately do exist in society at this time.
That's a very difficult area to go into because, regressive ideologies can have their basis in many different places. It can be power structures, social structures, political structures, and some interpretations of religion as well that can lead to some of these negative thoughts about what is permissible, what is not permissible. As I said, look at the diversity in the Muslim world. For every regressive thing, you know there are countries and people who are Muslim as us, or better Muslims who are doing things differently. So clearly there are many interpretations
ways to do things within the within our religion, like you said. Let me just come back to you. I'm going to go to Anum. Anum, overall, this, as far as the way that Bari Sahab articulated, of course, regressive thinking, but the fact that we also have Malala Yousafzai in Pakistan, and she's going to address this conference, that will also have a very, very positive impact overall on the role of women. And of course, girls going to school. That is something we're all looking forward to tomorrow also, right?
Yes, of course. Not only Malala, but powerful women, just like General Negar, while she narrated her story, that she was the only one who was alone in her house. She did not have her father, her brothers by her side. Her father passed away at a very early age. She just stood against all the odds all alone, just to make sure that she wanted herself to educate and to become a strong woman. And here we see her standing as the first ever Muslim general, and that too in a country like Pakistan. So yes, we have such success stories like Malala. Malala is also a very good example of how the diversity, or you can actually come out of adversity and make out a name for yourself. So yes, Malala is a very promising leader, young leader, as far as the young education perspective is concerned of the world. However, Bari Sahab has just interestingly highlighted a main idea of using religion as a major obstacle sometimes, which can be misinterpreted by the people, or it is sometimes misquoted in order to create a hindrance for the girls' education. And it also came under discussion in the OIC session 1 and session 2, and the people from different Muslim communities highlighted the fact that there is not a single verse in Quran that says that do not educate women. It starts with the word ikra, which means read. So they were also highlighting the fact that the religion is giving you empowerment to educate both men and women. There is no segregation, as you can just allow the men to go to the schools or educate themselves, and do not allow the girls to go and stay inside the house. So yes, we need to have such perspective of the religion as well, where we can facilitate our young girls to start looking forward to their religion from this perspective, instead of just looking at the religion for creating boundaries and for not allowing them to, you know, be a counter or important part of the society.
We also expect there to be an Islamabad declaration at the end of the event, right? Which is going to be a combination of strategies that all the countries, you know, OIC countries can adopt overall.
It did already happen. The Islamabad declaration has already taken place. It was signed by both the Secretary Generals of OIC and the Muslim world, and it was quite promising to see that under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, these two major Islamic countries and powers have come together. And when you are talking about Muslim countries, you do not take Muslim countries as an easy countries. If they become coordinated and their efforts become coordinated and well aligned, there is nothing which can be more powerful in bringing legislations and bringing the decisions in place. And once implemented and once in place, they can be, creating change in the society. While we are talking about Pakistan and the adverse situations in Pakistan, about the girls' education, let me also tell you that I came across a lot of such delegates as well who were representing, for instance, Myanmar, and the delegate from Myanmar, he told me that we have such a difficult life of, war zone created in the country for all this time, that we do not have the basic right for girl or men education or boys education at all. So if there is a hindrance, it is not only in our Pakistani society, it is a hindrance in all over the world due to one reason or the other. So yes, we have challenges, we have opportunities side by side as well. So let's just look at the positive side of it, of how the opportunities can be cashed or used in order to bring legislations and reforms in the Muslim communities.
Right. I just want to quickly go to Faisal Sahab. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Faisal Sahab, there is, of course, the private education, the system of private education overall. Do you think, of course, there's a role that can be played there also with regard to, overall trying to combat the kind of disparity that we see? Do you think that there are steps being taken? And I think there are some universities, there are some schools that do take such steps. Do you think that, perhaps that's something that can be encouraged, that can perhaps be taken to a larger extent? We can, get them to contribute also.
Gee, now 40-something% of our children who are enrolled in schools go to private schools. So it's no longer a small system, it's a very large system in itself. We're talking of millions of children. I think there are tremendous opportunities for private-public partnerships, which some of them are being explored right now by both the government of Sindh and government of Punjab. There is still a lot more potential for doing that in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well. And new forms of private-public partnerships. So not just the matter of handing over schools to private sector, to public schools to private sector to run, but very different kinds of and different forms of private-public partnership in teacher training, teacher support, and many other things can happen. It's also the case that private sector also needs a lot of the what we call low-fee schools. They also need some support because they don't have enough resources to improve quality of education. I think there also the use of public money, jaise Punjab Education Foundation has done some of that work. So some of that work needs to extend to other provinces, other places as well. And Sindh is already doing that, and I think that needs to be go to the national scale as well. So there are tremendous opportunities available for cooperation between private and public. Then there's the side of law also. We can use law sometimes to extend the reach for those who can't afford private schooling. So, for example, India has a clause in its constitution that in its laws that says that each school will have, I think it's 10 or 15 or 20% of children who come from those who can't pay from their own pocket, and they have to have them in their in their school. So things like that can also be
definitely some of the initiatives that can make a huge difference, and a marked difference at least to overall those who can't afford this kind of education. Thank you so much for joining us, Faisal Bari Sahab. Thank you for your very valuable input today. It was great having you. Anum Abbasi, thank you for updating us about the conference. Thank you for telling us what all went on. Thank you for joining us today. Overall, of course, we hope that this conference will make a difference. And of course, we are looking at, already this effort that is being a joint effort by the OIC to come to, those kind of, to work towards the goals where we see girls' education, and we see the girls' education being taken as a priority. We were looking at perhaps those kind of solid initiatives that can make, an actual difference in society, that can make an actual difference in not only girls' education, but also in the kind of regressive thinking and, change in overall the society's dynamic towards education for women, education for girls. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.